Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Meher Sher and these are the headlines. Turkey says its troops will work together with Russian forces to defend the rights of Azerbaijan. Defense Minister Hulusi Akar said this at a ceremony in Baku marking the arrival of Turkish peacekeeping forces. Akar said activities of the two forces will increase after the Joint Monitoring Center starts operating. In India, the state of Kerala has moved a resolution against the Modi government's contentious farm laws. The state chief minister says the reforms were not only anti-farmer but also pro-corporate. Meanwhile, the centre has accepted two demands of the farmers, but the repeal is yet to be discussed. But the unions have decided to continue their protest till all demands are met. China has slammed the U.S. for sailing two warships through the sensitive Taiwan Strait. The Defense Ministry denounced the trip as a provocation and show of force. This was the 13th sailing through the strait by the U.S. Navy this year, second in this month alone. The global deaths from COVID-19 have surpassed 1.8 million with more than 82 million cases. Meanwhile, the U.S. has hit another daily record for deaths with nearly 4,000 fatalities overnight. The toll in the country has crossed 342,000 with nearly 20 million cases. And in Pakistan, the virus has claimed 58 lives and infected nearly 2,500 people. The nationwide tally of deaths has crossed 10,000 with cases above 479,000. And in football, Atletico Madrid have ended the year atop La Liga after beating Getafe 1-0. Luis Suarez's first half header won the game for Madrid. At 35 points, Atletico are 2 points clear of rivals and defending champions Real Madrid. Well, those were the headlines. More news in detail after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. And now for the news in more detail. We start off with Turkey. Turkey says its troops will work together with Russian forces to defend the rights of Azerbaijan. Defense Minister Hulusi Akar said this at a ceremony in Baku marking the arrival of Turkish peacekeeping forces. Akar said activities of the two forces will intensify after the Joint Monitoring Center starts operating. Akar said the troops are clearing mines and improvised explosives planted by the Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh region. Meanwhile, Azerbaijan's defense minister, Zakir Hasanov, said Turkey has always been by Baku's side. Turkey and Russia signed a memorandum of understanding to monitor the peace deal signed between Azerbaijan and Armenia. Moving on, in India, the state of Kerala has moved a resolution against the Modi government's contentious farm laws. The state chief minister says the reforms were not only anti-farmer but also pro-corporate. He said the country was witnessing one of the most iconic protests by the farmers. The chief minister said Delhi came up with the laws at a time when the farm sector was facing challenges. Meanwhile, the center has accepted two demands of the farmers, but the repeal is yet to be discussed. The two parties will meet for a seventh round of talks on January 4th, but the unions have decided to continue their protests till all demands are met. And in Afghanistan, one civilian has been killed and two others wounded in a blast in the capital, Kabul. In a statement, Kabul police said the blast targeted a car in the Chehel Sutun area. Meanwhile, media reports claimed the vehicle carried employees of the presidential palace. But the presidential office has not yet commented on the matter. No group has claimed responsibility for the blast. Kabul has been beset by a deadly wave of violence over the last few weeks, which threatens to derail the peace process. Now, China has slammed the United States for sailing 2 warships through the sensitive Taiwan Strait. The Defense Ministry denounced the trip as a provocation and show of force. It said Chinese ships and aircraft trailed the destroyers USS John S. McCain and USS Curtis Wilbur. Beijing added that its military was prepared to respond to all threats and provocations. Meanwhile, the U.S. Navy says the warships conducted a routine transit following international law. It said the transit demonstrates the U.S. commitment to a free and open Indo-Pacific. This was the 13th sailing through the strait by the U.S. Navy this year, second in this month alone. The U.S. military has flown nuclear-capable B-52 bombers over the Middle East to deter any potential adversary. In a statement, the U.S. Central Command said the flight underscores commitment to regional security. Chief General Frank McKenzie said the flight proves U.S. ability to deploy combat power on short notice. He said Washington is ready and able to respond to any aggression directed at America or its interests. This was the 3rd bomber deployment by the U.S. in the Middle East in the last 45 days. Tensions are high amid concerns Iran may retaliate to mark the first anniversary of Qasem Soleimani's assassination. Now, Iran has accused UK's security company G4S of playing a role in the killing of General Qasem Soleimani. The top Iranian commander was killed by an American drone strike in Baghdad in early January this year. Iran's Prosecutor General spokesperson Ali Al-Qasi said G4S provided security at Baghdad airport. He said as soon as Soleimani and his comrades arrived at Baghdad airport, employees of G4S provided information to the United States. Meanwhile, in a statement, G4S has rejected the claim as completely unfounded speculation. The statement said G4S had no involvement in the attack on Soleimani or Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis. Now, moving on to the pandemic, the global deaths from COVID-19 have surpassed 1.8 million with more than 82 million cases. Meanwhile, a highly infectious variant first discovered in Britain has now been detected in the U.S. state of California. The death toll in the U.S. has crossed 342,000 with nearly 20 million cases. More on the pandemic in this report.
The claims of achieving herd immunity against COVID-19 during the first wave of the pandemic have turned out to be botched, as even after a year, rarely a day goes by when one country or the other does not report its highest yet cases or deaths. Brazilian syringe and needle makers warn the country's vaccination program is at risk, as the government set auction prices too low and failed to draw bids for enough syringes. The U.S. has reported over 125,000 coronavirus-related hospitalizations, highest since the pandemic began. A nurse in California tested positive more than a week after receiving the Pfizer vaccine, but the company says the body needs more time to build up protection. The U.S. top infectious disease expert says the country may return to normal life by fall next year if states diligently vaccinate population.
If we do the kind of vaccines through April, May, June, July, that by the time we get to the early fall, we will have enough good herd immunity to be able to really get back to some strong semblance of normality. Schools, theaters, sports events, restaurants. I believe if we do it correctly, we will be there by the early fall.
Turkey has received its first batch of COVID-19 vaccines from China. Italy reported over 16,000 new cases after the premier ruled out mandatory vaccinations. An old home in Paris received first shot of the vaccine amid criticism of France's slow start to its vaccination campaign. As England extends its toughest restrictions, Prime Minister Boris Johnson says the government is forced to impose curbs because of the pace of the spread of new variant.
On the downside, there is a new strain of the virus which is spreading much faster and surging across the country. And we've seen a 40% increase in cases in England in the last week alone, almost 15% more patients in hospital, more than at the peak of the first wave. And yesterday, sadly, we recorded almost 1,000 deaths across the UK.
China has approved a vaccine developed by Sinopharm, while a conditional approval was given to the National Biotech Group. Meanwhile, Australia will ring in the new year with harsher restrictions as the country's 2 largest states battle to quash first clusters in their capital cities.
Now, U.S. Senate leader Mitch McConnell has declined to schedule a swift vote to boost coronavirus aid. The move shut the door on President Donald Trump's push for $2,000 relief checks.
Mitch McConnell said the bill approved by the Democrat-led House has no realistic path to quickly pass the Senate. He said hiking aid checks will be another fire hose of borrowed money. The senator said the money will go to plenty of American households that just don't need it.
But more broadly, here's the deal. The Senate is not going to split apart the three issues that President Trump linked together just because Democrats are afraid to address two of them. The Senate's not going to be bullied into rushing out more borrowed money into the hands of Democrat rich friends who don't need the help.
Meanwhile, the Senate voted 80-12 to begin a debate to override Trump's veto of a defense policy bill with another procedural vote due on Friday. The House of Representatives already voted overwhelmingly to overturn the veto. If successful, the effort will lead to the first veto override of Trump's presidency. A new Congress is set to be sworn in on Sunday amid the ongoing political battle.
And for more on the pandemic in Pakistan, 58 people have lost their lives to COVID-19 over the past 24 hours. This takes the country's death toll to 10,105. The health ministry reported over 2,400 new cases overnight. Officials say out of over 479,000 countrywide cases, more than 435,000 people have recovered. The National Command and Operations Center says the number of active cases has crossed 34,000. The Punjab province accounts for most of the deaths with just over 4,000 lives lost, while Sindh has reported over 3,500 fatalities yet. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has signed the post-Brexit trade deal with the EU soon after it got approval from the MPs. The deal sets out new trading terms between the two sides and is due to come into effect on January 1st. House of Commons Speaker Lindsay Hoyle says Queen Elizabeth has granted royal assent to the agreement. In a specially convened Parliament sitting, Prime Minister Boris Johnson said London will work with the EU to reshape the British economy. The Parliament overwhelmingly backed the agreement in a high-speed process, but opponents say the country will still be worse off than it was while it was in the EU. The post-Brexit trade deal will take effect at midnight today. At least 3 people have died as protesters clashed with police on Peru's Pan American Highway. The demonstrators, comprising farm laborers, demanded better wages and working conditions. They also called for reform to the decades-old agrarian law, which they call unjust. The Ombudsman's office representative, Jose Aguero, said 2 protesters died of gunshot wounds, while a 56-year-old cancer patient died on a vehicle stranded by the protest. He said 24 people were also injured in the clashes, including 15 policemen. The president of Council of Ministers, Violeta Bermudez, condemned the demonstration. In Venezuela, the Supreme Court has ruled a move by the National Assembly to extend its term as invalid. The ruling paves way for President Nicolas Maduro to take charge of the body next month. The court declared any action by current legislators to continue or extend their status to be lacking in judicial validity and effect. The opposition viewed the top court's decision as beholden to Maduro's dictatorial regime. Meanwhile, the U.S. has blacklisted 2 Venezuelan officials over a trial of former executives of American refiner Citgo. In a statement, the Treasury Department said it banned Supreme Court Judge Lorena Cornelis and the government's prosecutor Ramon Torres. And we'll be back with more news after a short break. Stay with us. And we're back. The United Nations is closing its joint peacekeeping mission with the African Union in Darfur today. In a statement, the UN said the Sudanese government will now be responsible for the protection of civilians. UNAMID said the patrols and other mandated tasks will take place for the last time. It said troops will now focus on providing security for the mission's drawdown activities. The mission will have 6 months to withdraw, which will be conducted in a phased manner. It said the unanimous adoption of a Security Council resolution on December 22nd and progress made by the transitional government of Sudan to address the conflict paved way for the withdrawal. Now, the cyber attacks on U.S. government agencies may have started earlier than last spring. Vice Chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Senator Mark Warner, revealed this in an interview. He said extensive investigations into the hack were ongoing. Warner said the U.S. government still does not have hardcore evidence whether classified secrets were compromised. He said gaps in U.S. and international law made it difficult to track and crack down on large-scale hacks. The Democratic senator added Washington and its allies must act to tighten controls.
We're still getting information from classified sources. I'm talking to people on the private sector side. I think it's safe to say that it may have started even earlier than March or April, and that the initial burrowing in may have started earlier, but the collection period, did start calendar year 2020.
In the U.S. state of Tennessee, investigators are determining if conspiracy theories motivated the Christmas Day bombing suspect. The reason why Anthony Quinn Warner detonated the bomb, killing himself, is still unknown. The suspect reportedly expressed support for unfounded theories and would camp out to hunt aliens. Police are also investigating whether he believed in 5G conspiracy theories. The suspect is said to have made statements about a lizard people conspiracy theory. It claims politicians and celebrities such as Justin Bieber and the Obamas are lizards with alien origins. The 63-year-old's criminal record only consisted of a 1978 marijuana-related charge. In Norway, 10 people were injured after a landslide smashed into a residential area near the capital, Oslo. Rescuers have deployed drones and dogs in a search for 12 people still missing. In a press conference, police spokesperson Roger Peterson said some 700 people were evacuated from the area. He said several houses have been destroyed. Conditions remain challenging, with the playground too unstable for emergency workers to walk on. A 2005 geological survey labeled the area at high risk of landslides, but new homes were still built. 8 Pakistani women have been honored in the Global 100 Outstanding Women Nurse and Midwife Leaders 2020 list. In a statement, Pakistan's Foreign Office lauded the nominees for their contributions to global healthcare. All 8 are faculty or alumni of the Al Khan University School of Nursing and Midwifery. The university said the list recognizes the vital role of nurses and midwives in providing health services and in helping achieve targets under the Global Sustainable Development Goals. The last full moon of the year cast its glow over Greece, lighting up festive towns and shores. In the coastal town of Rafina, the full moon added a special touch to Christmas decorations. NASA says the full moon, known as the cold moon, began to appear on December 29th in some countries. It will continue to appear full until December 31st in others. The Old Farmer's Almanac website says a Native American tribe, Mohican, also refers to the full moon as the long night moon. It is the closest to the winter solstice and shines above the horizon longer than most full moons. In Russia, people flock to the colorfully decorated center of Moscow to get some New Year's spirit as 2020 comes to an end. More in this report.
Russians bid adieu to 2020, hoping for a better year ahead and for the pandemic to end soon. Due to the effects of the novel coronavirus, the year 2020 has been dominated by a change in everyday life, which made it a rather unpleasant year all across the globe.
This is the most unusual year I remember. I can't say it was the most pleasant, but there were good events too. It is good we survived it. I hope the next year will regain balance.
According to the mayor of the Russian capital, Moscow will not impose a curfew during the New Year holiday despite a rise in coronavirus cases. However, Moscow will extend the school holiday by 1 week until January 17 in hopes of stabilizing the situation.
This year was tough and tougher than the previous ones. For our family, the impact was not so dreadful as it looks in the perspective of Russia and the whole world. There were a lot of interesting and pleasant events, and I hope it will be so in the future. So we're looking into the future and the coming year, 2021, with hope.
Russia launched a vaccination program with the Russian-made Sputnik V vaccine earlier this month, but has resisted imposing a strict lockdown and chose to rely on targeted measures instead.
New York City is preparing to usher in 2021 with the traditional Waterford crystal ball drop over Times Square. This year, New Year's Eve will be a scaled-back virtual event because of the pandemic. The giant ball had a test run on Wednesday atop One Times Square. A range of colorful lights illuminated the ball as it rose to the top of a pole where it will rest until New Year's Eve. The ball has 2,688 Waterford crystal triangles, and each year Waterford adds a few new triangles. Organizers say the ball also has a palette of more than 16 million colors, which creates a kaleidoscope effect. And in Uganda, a 7-year-old has become the talk of the town for his immense knowledge of aircraft and budding flying skills. His love for taking to the air and adoration for Elon Musk might earn him a ticket to Mars someday. This report has more.
Wonder kid Graham Shima is making headlines in Uganda and beyond for his admiration for aviation. A lover of mathematics and science, the student has already flown as a trainee 3 times on a Cessna 172. He says he wants to be a pilot and an astronaut and someday travel to Mars.
In future, I want to be a pilot and an astronaut. I was interested in astronomy because I wanted to go to Mars and the moon. Our moon is called Lunar Moon.
Shima's curiosity for flight was piqued by a freak incident. As a 3-year-old, a chopper flew so low to the ground that it blew off the roof of his grandmother's house while he was playing outside.
A police Cessna knocked our grandmommy's house, rentals. So I was at work, and that time my son used to live at my judge's place, at my grandmom's place, because I never had a maid at that time. So I was at work. They called me. It happened when my son was outside. He spotted everything, what happened. So from that day, my son got much interested in aviation.
Last year, Shima joined a local aviation academy and began lessons at home on aircraft parts and aviation vocabulary. Shima has flown as a co-pilot between January and March before the COVID-19 pandemic stopped his practice. He has since been focusing on aviation theory and immersing himself in videos about space exploration.
On to business. China and the European Union have concluded talks on an investment agreement. The announcement was made during a meeting between Chinese President and EU leaders via video link. Chinese President Xi Jinping termed the agreement as balanced and mutually beneficial. He added the pact would greatly boost global economic recovery in the post-pandemic era. Xi also called on the EU to uphold free trade and provide a fair environment for Chinese investors. European leaders said the completion of talks was a significant milestone in EU-China relations. They said both sides had the political will to strengthen dialogue and cooperation for mutual benefit. The two sides will now carry out legal review, translation, and other technical work so that the agreement can be signed as soon as possible. After inking, the agreement will take effect after both sides complete their respective internal approval procedures. European markets are trading lower of the final day of the year, dominated by the coronavirus pandemic and extraordinary stimulus measures. London's FTSE has lost over 1%. The pan-European stock 600 slipped close to 0.5% as majority sectors declined. Frankfurt's DAX, the CAC 40 in Paris, and Italy's FTSE MIB are also down. Earlier, Asian stocks traded mixed, with Hong Kong, South Korean, and Chinese edging up, while Japanese and Australian bourses shed. On to sports, and let's begin with football. Atletico Madrid have ended the year atop La Liga after beating Getafe 1-0. Luis Suarez's first half header won the game for Madrid. Atletico's win comes during manager Diego Simeone's 500th game as in charge of the club. At 35 points, Atletico are 2 points clear of rivals and defending champions Real Madrid. Meanwhile, in another fixture, Real Madrid put off a disappointing show as they drew Elche 1-1. Luka Modric opened the scoring for Real, only to be equalized by Fidel's second-half penalty, earning his side a point. Real Madrid follow leaders Atletico on second place with 33 points. New Zealand's Kane Williamson has topped International Cricket Council's latest rankings as the leading Test batsman. The Kiwi skipper leapfrogged Australia's Steve Smith and Indian skipper Virat Kohli. Williamson scored a match-winning century in the opening Test against Pakistan, helping New Zealand win by 101 runs. India's batting mainstay Kohli follows on second, with Aussie Smith on the third place. Pakistan skipper Babar Azam remains on fifth place in the rankings. Among bowlers, Australia's Pat Cummins continues to dominate the list as the top-ranked Test bowler. England's Stuart Broad tails on second, with Kiwi Neil Wagner on third place. English Ben Stokes retains his spot as a top-ranked Test all-rounder. And now it's time to take a look at the latest weather updates from around the world. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.